What is the most pathetic thing you've seen someone do for attention? Story 1. When I was in high school, there was a pretty bad bus accident when a bus driver fell asleep at the wheel, and a lot of people were hurt, some very badly. One girl was in a coma and sustained brain damage, another walks permanently with a limp and facial scarring, and one guy's hand mobility was permanently affected. I went to a really small high school and it was a pretty big deal. It was a national news story for a few days too. If you're curious, pretty much everyone in the bus that crashed sued anyone who was remotely associated with the accident, from the owner of the bus company to the teachers who were on the bus with his students, and some people got quite a bit of money. Anyway, there was one girl who claimed all sorts of damage from the accident. She came back to school wearing a brace on her leg and her arm, would cry if anyone mentioned the accident, and made up terrific stories about the crash itself, the nightmare she was having, and would just go on and on in a really ridiculous way about the accident. Come to find out, she wasn't even on the bus that crashed. She was on another bus. In the scramble or craziness after the accident, she went to the accident, pretended to have been in the bus, and made up all of her injuries. Looking back, she was clearly damaged. She was always just kind of a little off. This is just the only really specific incident I can point to illustrate her strangeness. The girl wasn't part of the accident, but managed to get brain damage. Story 2. In college, I was walking to class one day, and there's this frat bro going in the same direction in front of me. Coming from the opposite way is a very attractive woman in business attire. She was a bit older than the average college student, maybe late 20s or early 30s, and about a billion times classier than frat bro. Frat bro stops the lady and starts trying to chat her up, asking for her number right off the bat. He's hitting on her like she's a freshman and not understanding why he's making no progress whatsoever. After a brief exchange and a polite dismissal from the lady, she continues on her way, leaving frat bro dejected. Then I see the wheels start turning in his head. He's standing there with his hand on his chin, pondering how this woman could possibly have not been seduced by his charm, and suddenly, his eyes light up as though he's had the most brilliant flash of insight in his entire life. He removes his shirt, shouts, "Hey!" And when the lady turns around, flexes with all his might. She rolls her eyes and resumes walking away. I absolutely lost it at this pathetic display. I got a smile and a wink from the woman as she walked past me, almost crying from laughing so hard. I've never seen such an absolutely pathetic expression in a person's face as that guy afterward. Story 3. I saw an overweight college girl ride a mechanical bull at a bar wearing a really short skirt and no undies. When she fell off, she took a long time getting up, using every opportunity she could to roll around with her legs above her head or bend way over. The entire bar ground to a halt and watched this girl drunkenly fooling around trying to stand up while exposing herself as much as possible. When she finally got up, she looked around and realized that everyone in the bar had the same shocked or traumatized expression on their face, and she burst into tears and ran and hid in the bathroom. She had probably been planning that all week. Well, she was trying to get a reaction out of them, and she did. Maybe they looked so horrified at how beautiful she looked falling off of that bull. Story 4. A girl my friend knows pretended to have cancer for 6 months, convinced everyone, got sympathy from everyone, got her friends to drive her to the hospital and shaved her head. The whole thing fell apart when someone phoned her mom to ask how her treatment was going. The mom had no idea what they were talking about. She even had get well pages set up on Facebook. Pretty messed up, bro. How did her mom not notice or care about her daughter's shaved head? Psst, guess what? This video is sponsored by none other than me and my awesome crew at Rufus Rugs. We're the masters of creating custom, hand-tufted rugs that truly capture who you are. Whether you're looking to turn one of our intriguing thumbnails into a rug, for purely academic reasons, of course, or you're eager to transform your room with some epic anime-inspired designs, we can get it done for you. These are all handmade by me and the team from Canada. No dropshipping BS here. Real, handmade custom rugs by me and my friends. Click the first link in the description to learn more. Story 5. My girlfriend's sister, we'll call her Carrie for the sake of these stories, is the queen of doing unnecessary, pathetic things to get attention. She overdramatizes everything and does whatever she can to bring attention to her. When there's nothing to overdramatize, she just makes stuff up. About herself, about her family, about her friends, about whoever or whatever. Just blatantly lies for attention. My favorite example. A guy Carrie barely knew in college who was several years older than her, but ran in a similar social circle, unexpectedly took their own life after a fight with his then-girlfriend one night. It was a really sad event on campus. He was a really great guy that was widely known and widely liked. However, he was diagnosed mentally ill with depression and schizophrenia, was off his meds for some reason, and was drinking heavily, with disastrous results. All of a sudden, Carrie is hyper-depressed and tells everyone that will listen that she was having a secret romantic relationship with him, that they were in love, that he was planning on leaving his girlfriend for her, and that they were planning on eloping together. She started telling everyone about how she missed him, how she couldn't stand to be alone, etc., etc. His girlfriend caught wind and confronted Carrie about it publicly. Carrie started to back off, saying, "Okay, maybe I overstated how involved we were. I made this stuff up about eloping, but we definitely were hooking up and he told me he loved me." When pressed further, she started to ramp down her story more and more. Okay, we only hooked up once, but he said he really liked it and wanted to do it again. Then, okay, we never hooked up, but we spent a lot of time together privately and I really cared about him. It finally came down to, okay, fine, I only met him once at a party and we barely talked, but I liked him and I wish I could have spent more time with him. Are you happy? Why do you have to be so mean? I was just trying to feel like I fit in. Who cares if I made a few things up about him? It made me feel like I was a part of his life. So she was spreading lies about this kid who had just passed, and even after she was called out on her lies, she still needed to make it about her and how everyone is so mean to her and how she didn't deserve to be treated like that, etc. The thing about Carrie is that she lies about anything that she thinks will get her attention, big or small, or something that she wants. Then she'll lie about lying if it gets her more attention. An example that is far less serious but just goes to show what kind of person she is. Carrie went to the same college that I did, but is a few years younger. After college, I moved out of state. One weekend, I came back to visit some friends that still lived there. Carrie hadn't yet graduated. I'm at this house, having some beers, and somehow the topic of laptops or computers comes up. I don't remember how exactly. One of my friends tells me, "Oh yeah, I hear you're buying Carrie a new laptop for Christmas. That's crazy nice of you. He must be making bank at the new job." I have no idea what he's talking about. He tells me that's what Carrie is telling people. I've never hinted to anyone, even myself, that I might be buying Carrie a laptop. The thought hadn't even crossed my mind. First, I wasn't yet at a point in my career where I could afford such an expensive gift for my girlfriend, let alone her little sister. Second, even if I could afford it, there's no chance I would buy such a nice gift for someone I disliked and didn't respect at all. The next day, I ran into Carrie and asked her what my buddy meant. She says, "Oh, no, I don't think I ever said that. I think one time you told me you had an old laptop laying around that I might be able to have, though. I think I mentioned that to him, and he must have misheard me." I tell her that I don't think I've ever had a conversation with her about laptops in any sort of context, and I certainly never said she could have any old ones I had lying around. She flipped out, started saying how mean I was for accusing her of lying, that she swears I said she could have my old laptop, and blah blah blah. She then storms out of the building we were in, drives straight home, and starts being a brat to her parents about me, about how mean I am, about how I said she could have my old laptop and now I'm taking it back, etc., etc. She managed to weasel her own parents into buying her a brand new laptop because she made such a big deal about it. So she lied to one of my friends completely unnecessarily and told them I'd buy her a brand new laptop. When confronted about it, she freaked out, threw a fit, and managed to scam her parents into buying her one. Then she started talking about how I'm such a jerk to everyone. Then she started bragging to everyone about her great new laptop and how awesome her parents are, all for the attention. Completely unnecessary lies and drama, when she probably could have accomplished the same exact result by just simply presenting her parents with a valid case for why she needed a new laptop without pissing anyone off. She sounds like a complete pathological liar. At this point, she really needs to get help from a professional. I wonder if anyone else in her family or friend circle sees how bad things have become. A therapist or meds would really help her get out of that spiral. Story 6. I was at a party. A cute female friend of mine was there, and a group of us were talking. This dude sits down in the arm of my chair and proceeds to block me out of the conversation. I chalk it up to idiocy and continue on with my night until we're all standing in a circle. And he, again, physically blocks me out of the circle. Continue on with the night, and I'm pretty drunk and fantastically high. Now I have no interest in dealing with this dude. Sober, I probably would have hit him, but again, the girl he's interested in is a friend of mine, so I'm like, whatever. Finally, at the end of the night, I'm sitting on the couch, staring at the lights in the ceiling, and she deliberately sits down, takes my arm, and puts it around her. Only then did I realize she was as disgusted by this guy's behavior as I was. He kept trying to talk to her, and she deliberately snuggled with me, and I had to look at him and say, "Hey buddy, isn't it obvious? You've been a jerk all night, and she's not interested. Please go somewhere else." Satisfying end to a long night. Story 7. Worst one I've got is an old friend who lied about being in the parachute regiment, British Army. He spouted his usual, yeah, we parachuted into X and Y with GPMGs and all that. Yada yada. No tactical drops have been executed in years. I just let him roll with it. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him on principle that he was an arse. Anyway, we ended up going out one night, and a couple of my friends who happened to be paras and went into the regiment roughly the time he said he did, come drinking with us. Anyway, sparking up some conversation about army days, he starts chucking it in. Yeah, it was this and that. And then the two guys stop deadpan and go, "So, you said you jumped to Nation X? First bat never jumped there." This being said, as they both rolled up the right sleeve and there, proudly displayed with a para logo with first underneath. I've never seen someone retract in his chair so quickly. After we left the bar, he decided to go home as he wasn't feeling well. Always funny to remind him of that when his ego gets a tad bit too big. Story 8. There was this kid at middle school who used to make up stupid stuff in a pathetic attempt to get people to like him. He wasn't the typical cool kid. Kind of fat and nerdy, but pretty smart, although lacking social skills. He'd create people in scenarios which were usually a piece of piss to figure out were just invented a brother, pretended to have stuff that he didn't, etc. It just seemed to go on. I think he was just desperate for any attention, good, bad, or indifferent, because of continually moving schools and having no apparent friends. Thankfully, he started to turn things around after leaving school and developed an actual personality of his own. Otherwise, I'd never have put up with him for so long. The thing which annoys me most to this day is that the kid was me. That is one crazy plot twist. Story 9. My teacher was reading passages from books, and one of them was about a girl who was adopted, and this one girl, Rebecca, ran out of the room crying. Later that day, she made the teacher apologize for talking about adopted kids because she was adopted. Get that attention. There are so many of these stories from my high school. One of my teachers was a very well-respected historian, and he was teaching a class about civil rights, and he said, "I'm going to say the N-word, but not out of disrespect. You just need to understand the exact examples I'm giving, okay?" Then, when he said that, the signs would say, "Keep insert N-word out of our schools." A group of 2 to 3 black girls stood up and ran out screaming, "Oh, hell no, he didn't. That racist white boy," etc. They tried getting him in trouble with the administration, but they were like, no, he's teaching you about civil rights. They probably weren't listening to the teacher at all until they heard that word. And you probably haven't liked the video yet because you've been too invested in these stories. So do it right now. Subscribe to the channel while you're at it. Story 10. I was an officer in the military, and my group and I belonged to the bottom 5%. Somehow we were the stooges of the military, crashing vehicles, breaking $75,000 antennas, using rifles as brake blocks, stealing a military truck, driving to town and starting bar fights with... One guy hit a moose with his grenade launcher, and we spent the rest of the exercise picking moose from the training ground. One guy botched a grenade toss, and a higher-ranking officer ended up in the hospital with shrapnel in his behind. At the time, I thought we were just being funny and stupid. Story 11. This is my biggest pet peeve. So, where do I begin? A guy I was friendly with in high school boasted constantly about being a published author. Having reading his work myself, as he would constantly shove it under the nose of anyone he was around, a red flag of a terrible artist, I knew that no publishing house in their right mind would ever put their money behind that. Turns out he just paid a huge sum of money to some guy on the internet to print out 300 of his books, which sat in boxes in his room. Also, he had the worst BO of anyone I've ever encountered, ever. In college, I came across another repeat attention hog offender in the form of a really hot girl that ran with our group. Being really hot her whole life, she simply assumed that the attention was to be focused on her at all times. She also drank heavily. Shocking. Whenever she was drunk, always, she would literally scream over the people who were talking. Pull out girls of guys' laps so she could sit there, take her top off when no one was looking at her, and cry for hours over injuries, like scraping her knee on the carpet, for example. She left school and I couldn't be happier. Story 12. My aunt and her boyfriend are made for each other. Here's some stuff about my aunt. Anything me or mom do, she can do better. I passed my driving test. She bought a car she couldn't drive. Crashed it on purpose into her own fence because my car was nicer. This was an excuse to make my grandmother buy her a new one. Got both her eyebrows pierced and looked like an owl, because I once said when I was 15 I wanted one eyebrow pierced. I was fanatical of Evanescence at the time. Got her lip pierced, which ended up going horribly wrong and infected because I had once said I wanted one. Started trying for another child because my mother had my baby brother. She was unsuccessful because her boyfriend is infertile. He didn't tell her this. Now for her boyfriend, which is hilarious. When my aunt first met him, he sent her tracks from his band. They were terrible, but my aunt liked them. She let me listen to one of them that he'd sent her a few days before, claiming it was a new song they just written. It turned out it was CKY's Skeletor vs. Beastman. He denied it. Then, when he finally decided to move in with my aunt, he revealed to himself that he was possessed by the Archangel Gabriel. Whenever someone said Gabriel 3 times, he would seem as if he was having an epileptic fit, which was grossly inappropriate, seeing as my uncle died in '96 of an epileptic fit and then speak in some form of pathetic possessed voice for half an hour. He did this frequently whenever we tried to approve it until my older brother got wind of it. My brother didn't stop, and after doing it around 3 times in about an hour, the boyfriend stopped doing it. He's never done it since. He's an oddball who doesn't shower. We spend as little time with him as humanly possible. On another note, an ex-boyfriend of mine created an entirely new identity via email to message me on how I would never be good enough for him, from a girl called Hannah, and that she was going to get him away from me because she was better. That's messed up. I can't believe she was a fan of Evanescence. Story 13. Freshman year, so this totally should have worked, this very cute girl, who had plenty of guys flirting with her, randomly starts talking about her nip piercings. The conversation hadn't been about tattoos or piercings. No one says anything. She starts kind of cradling her chest and tells everyone that she's got charms in the piercings. No one says anything. She asks us if we want to see them. No one says anything. Spent the next few minutes looking really sad, still cradling. I almost took pity on her. But if the guys didn't want to see and I actually didn't want to see, why bother? Freshman year teens not wanting to see stuff like that? This almost seems like a fake story to me. Story 14. My ex has a bit of a problem controlling her emotions when she's angry. I laugh every time I think about her. One day we were sitting around and I got a craving for a grilled cheese sandwich, so I asked her if she wanted one. She said yes, and I went about making a couple of them. She walks over and flips out on me for having the heat too high, and I tell her, "It's cool. I'm standing here watching them. They won't burn and they look like they're doing fine. The cheese is melting and everything." And she goes off on me about how I should never cook with a heat so high and that she has had it with this BS and she's leaving me. I was a bit perplexed, but I was like, "All right, if you want to break up with me over a grilled cheese sandwich, that's cool." And she leaves. A few days later, after not talking to her, assuming we broke up, she calls me and is like, "So do you want me back yet?" And I'm like, "Nope." And she's like, "Well, I want you back." And I replied, "That's fine, but I don't want you back. And I'm really happy you broke up with me. I wasn't happy with you and it was a long time coming." "What? I was just testing you." "Looks like you failed your own test. See ya." She got knocked up with some other dude's baby about 6 months later and I laughed. Bullet dodged. Story 15. My sister lied about getting an She called me out of the blue one night, crying and frantic, and explained that she'd gotten into for her 5th kid. She's only in her 20s, never held a job and can't care for the other 4, so I figured I'd try to be supportive. Nothing to be done about it after the fact, right? Turns out she was lying. She was just curious about how I would react, so she kept me on the phone, acting depressed for most of the evening. I guess she didn't have anyone else to talk to. Also, my brother did the accent thing, except he'd only gone to school an hour and a half away from home and somehow picked up an English accent. It was sad, but it hardly registered in the top 10 for my family. Well, what I got out of the first story is that their sister needs to learn about contraceptives. Story 16. Had a friend who made up a fake girl named Melissa on MySpace. Clearly, this was a while ago. She said Melissa was coming to our school next year and was currently being homeschooled in another town. Everyone became friends with a fake MySpace Melissa, and one of her guy friends actually started falling for her. He asked for her cell and apparently she didn't have one. He asked if he could hang out with her. Apparently, her parents wanted to move away from our town because she wasn't paying attention to her schoolwork. So the guy asks if he can at least meet her before she moves. This is where my friend had panicked. She was the one pretending to be Melissa and made up a whole story about Melissa getting into a car accident. The next day, she tells us Melissa is in a coma. A week later, her parents took off her life support. This guy eventually put 2 and 2 together and exposed my friend in the middle of school in front of everyone. It was amazing. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy what's the biggest adult tantrum you've seen. Story 4 was a real deal breaker. See you on that one.